Thanks for attending my session. Just briefly, a little bit about myself. I am a Fabric and Power BI data consultant working for myself at Formu. I've been using Power BI and Fabric since its inception in private previews. You can find me on LinkedIn at Formu and at Twitter at Gilbert Q. Okay, so just a little bit more quickly about myself in terms of if you're looking to get some accelerators in terms of leveraging different capabilities within the Microsoft Power BI Fabric ecosystem. I have built some accelerators, as you can see over here, with regards to getting the data and certain metrics, more monitoring, that kind of stuff. So if you are interested, please go have a look at Formu accelerators, where there are more details with regards to that. Okay, so getting into today's session, I'm just quickly going to give an overview of Microsoft Fabric. I'm assuming some people, or most of the people attending this conference, have seen it, have heard about it, but I thought it's just best to just cover it again, just to make sure that everyone understands what the Microsoft Fabric ecosystem is. So what we have is, if we had to start from the bottom up, everything is in a single data foundation, which is stored in one lake. This centralizes data storage, eliminating the need for different databases or data warehouse. It is all unified in terms of being a SaaS product service. Your security and governance, your compute and storage, as well as your business model, is all within this one location, this one SaaS service. Then moving up from them, we've got what they call the intelligent data foundation, where we have the different pillars or workloads that you can use. Starting on the left is Data Factory, which includes the data movement capabilities as you previously found in Azure Data Factory, and they're bringing all those components across into Data Factory and Fabric. It's not complete at the moment, but they are working to get it there. Next is the data engineering, where you design the systems to organize and analyze large amounts of data. So this is where you can use things like Dataflow Gen2, notebooks, which I'll be showing a little bit later in my presentation. Then you get the data warehouse, which is the scale and compute, which are the compute and storage are independently stored where you can use your familiar SQL, T-SQL knowledge and background to that when using the data warehouse. Then there's the data science, which uses the AI tools to build end-to-end networks, enrich data, and improve insights. The other pillar is the real-time analytics for analyzing large volumes of real-time streaming data. So that's when you're looking at, you want this actual real-time data coming in. What I'm going to be showing today is what I've classified as near real-time, which is not instantaneously coming in. And then second to last, we have Power BI, which a lot of people are familiar with. This is where the final product often comes into in terms of reporting and showing visualizations. And finally, there's the data activator. And this is where you're getting alerts based on your Power BI semantic models or your real-time data that's coming in. So in today's session, what the parts I'm going to be covering are a data factory. So that's where I'm going to be bringing some data in. Then in the data engineering, I'm going to be using notebooks and Dataflow Gen2 to bring the data in. And finally, I will be creating a Power BI DirectLake model, semantic model, where you can actually see the data coming in near real time. And in terms of this near real-time demo, what I want to show you here is how easy it is to get this data coming in into your actual platform. So the previous or old near real-time solutions, as you can see, were complex and quite hard to bring together. As you can see, there were a whole lot of each. You can think of almost each rectangle is a different source, a different way of doing things, and each of these were typically independently created and run, and then you had to go and stitch these things together in order to create these real-time scenarios. So quite often it not only took a lot of time, a lot of effort, it was also quite complex to actually get this all going, because sometimes not only did you have to create and manage these sources, you also had to manage the clusters, etc. So there's definitely still a use case for real-time scenarios, and as you saw in the previous slides in Microsoft Fabric, this can definitely be done within Fabric. But in terms of a near real-time solution, the reason this often came about, and the reason for doing this presentation, is I've had a lot of questions in the past where what people consider real-time is they've inputted something into a CRM system, or for instance an SAP source, and now they want to see how's that impacted in the Power BI reports that in the end. And traditionally, this was very hard to do and took a lot of time and effort. And the old default answer was, you can do this, you'll see it tomorrow. While a lot of the time people would like to see it fairly quickly, it doesn't have to be within seconds, but within, say, an hour or so, typically they'll be more than happy to actually see that information come through. So that's where I had a look and thought, okay, how is it possible to actually do this using Microsoft Fabric? So as explained, what I'm going to do today is just to show you an overall diagram before I go into the actual demo. Is I've got my data sources, which I'm going to be having in Azure Data Lake storage. Then I've got a SQL Server running, which has got some data. And finally, I've got a CSV file. Again, just trying to also show you the flexibility within Microsoft Fabric, where your data can be in all the different areas, and you can then still bring it through relatively easily and quickly into Fabric. Then moving on from that, where I'm going to ingest and transform, I'm going to use a Dataflow Gen2 to query the SQL Server data. I'm going to use the notebook to get the data from the Data Lake Azure storage and be bringing that in. And then I'm also going to be using the shortcuts to do that. All of this will then be put into a lakehouse, and the data will be running into the lakehouse. And finally, I'll create that Power BI semantic model using DirectLake. So we'll be automatically passing through, and as the data is getting updated in Power BI, in the lakehouse, you will then see that data automatically updating in the reports. So just to show you, how it stitches together and how the demo works, so you can actually see, oh, okay, the data is going to pretty much flow through quite quickly to get that done. Okay, so that's the last of the slides that I have today. Let me now go through to my. So here we have, if you can see, is my. Let me just hide that, make it a bit better. What we have over here is my. Oops, there we go. It's better. Here I am in my Fabric workspace. What I have done, just to save a bit of time, I already am using a mirrored database, which is mirrored to a SQL Server, Azure SQL Server that is running. And that is just so that I can show you data coming into the SQL Server. And what I've done is I have already created a lakehouse. And as you can see in here, I've got an old table called dim dates, but there's nothing actually in this table at the moment in terms of what it's doing, etc. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shortcut to my data, which is now sitting in an Azure Blob storage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over here and I want to say I want to create a new shortcut. And as you can see, when you create a new shortcut, there's multiple options. Now, some of you might be thinking, why is Microsoft OneLake as a shortcut? So what that means is you can shortcut from other workspaces, etc., into your existing one, and I'll show that a little later. But first of all, I'm going to go to my Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage. I'm then going to put in the location of where I want to look for the data. As you can see over here, I have already authenticated. If it's the first time you are authenticating, you can see that there are multiple options here in terms of if you want to use an account key, organizational account, a shared access signature, or a service principal. That obviously typically depends on your requirements within your organization, but you do get that flexibility. So I'm just going to do that again so I don't have to re-enter the key. So now what it's doing is it's actually going to go through and have a look at all the options that I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to get the Fabric sales bucket or directory that I have in here. And as you can see, I have got the file sitting within here. Again, just giving you an overview when you are connecting to make sure you select in the folder where you're expecting to see the information that you want. Next, I can give it a shortcut name. Over here, you can also edit it if you want to give it a different name from what the source is. You might want to put, it's the shortcut name, for instance, is over here. Let's just say I put Azure Data Lake Storage. So I know that the shortcut's coming from there. I can then click OK, and then I can click on Create. So now what you can see is the shortcut now is created over here. And if I had to click on that, I can see that information. So once again, this is really powerful in terms of the data is still sitting in my Azure Data Lake storage. I haven't brought it into Fabric. It's just a shortcut showing me that information. So that's where it gets really powerful in terms of having seen the data, but not necessarily having to go and import the data. So I don't have to make multiple copies of that. Okay, so that's one of the sources that I'm going to be using and bringing in this information. The next, what I wanted to show is my my SQL Mirror. So if I had to just go over here, what I can do is I'm actually just going to click on the SQL endpoint. And what you can see over here, if I just had to go and run the top 100, what you'll hopefully see shortly is the data in here. It's just taking a while to run. Sometimes it does take a while to run on the first time because it's got to figure out what's going on. So as you can see over here, the information has come in, and typically if I do it on the invoice date here, you can see over here there is some data for this year, and I'll be running a query to running data into the mirror, which will then come through here and then go through to the reports. So this is now what I want to do is I actually want to take this information and shortcut it into my existing lakehouse. And the reason I want to do that is because I'm then going to be using a Dataflow Gen2, again, just to show you how I'm bringing all this different information together to do the near real-time reporting. So now if I go back to my lakehouse, which I created previously over here, what I can then do is I can once again say, okay, I want to do a new shortcut. And as I explained earlier, this time I'm going to actually say I want from Microsoft OneLake. So depending on your permissions and what you have, this is my own tenant where I'm working on. So obviously there's a lot more workspaces that I can see. But for instance, here I've got access to the mirrored database over here. I can click on next. And now if I had to expand the tables, I can then see the particular table that I want to know. As you can see, the actual contents of the tables is the mirrored content coming in, which in the underlying information is a Parquet file. So what I can do, I can just select that I want to bring in that table. Again, if I wanted to give it another name, I could give it another name. If I had to expand that, I'm just going to leave it as is. And now that new shortcut has been created. So as you can see over here now, whilst this is in the file section, did I put it in the right section? Let me see. Yes, I did. Or did I? I actually wanted to create this. Let me just recreate this because I put it in the wrong section. Apologies for that. I actually want to create this in the table section. So let me try again. So over here, I'm going to go new shortcut. And again, showing you the flexibility, even though I put it in the wrong location. What this is doing is you can create a shortcut and put the files in the file section, or what I'm going to do now is I actually want that mirrored table to be in the table section. So the difference here is when I say in the files is actually, as I explained earlier, is put in the Parquet files, the Delta log files, etc. But when I say I want to put this into the table version, it's actually going to put the contents of that table. So if I go over here and I go create, you can now see it's coming up and it's busy creating that shortcut. And now if I had to click on that shortcut to the mirrored database, it's now actually going to come through and it's going to give me that information. So far, I've just created an Azure Data Lake shortcut and I've created a mirrored database shortcut. So essentially, these are my source files that I'm going to be using to then create these are my sources that I'm going to be using to then create the near real-time reports. Okay, just see there's a big a question from Abhishek. I'm just pausing to see. The file structure, column data type should be consistent for this kind of approach. Will it break if the CSV files kept changing the column structure? Yes, that's 100% right. As with a lot of data ingestion, it needs to conform to the same schema. With that being said, there is an option in Dataflow Gen2 where you can change the schema type to be dynamic when loading the data. I haven't played around with that personally too much. I typically always recommend making sure that the data is consistent so that it can keep on going and you don't get these weird unknowns creeping in. So thanks for the question, Abhishek. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a notebook which will be using the shortcut cells. So what I'm going to do is, if memory serves, yep, I have it over here. So what I'm going to do is just go back here. Let me just change my persona to data engineering. And what I get an option here is to then import. Let me just bring in this notebook over here. And here it is over here. So now it's going to wait for this notebook to load. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start. So what you can see over here, let me just make sure that this is mapped. I actually don't want it to map through. So typically, the first thing I always do is just make sure that I'm mapping it through to the right lakehouse. So I'm actually just going to remove this one so I can put it into the right lakehouse. I'm going to say I want to go to the existing one, and I'm going to be using my demo, which I have been using. So I'm just going to map it, and what we should see over here is our two tables and our files, etc. So I'm just going to start running this because sometimes the Spark session can take a little while to start. And all that I'm really doing here is I now am going to access the CSV file in the file section. So the nice thing here, why don't I see it? Fabric forming demo. Let me just give this a refresh. No, let me just come back here. Let's make sure I've mapped it through to the right one. Pretty sure I had. That's interesting. Did I put it in? Okay. I have map this through under the API, but that's okay. So just coming back to the notebook, is the first section is basically just getting the notebook started. What you can also do, as I was explaining, is you can also browse while you're in the notebook to see the files. So what you can see over here is currently this is my location of the CSV, but I've actually changed the location. So what I need to do over here is I need to go /API/ADLS. And what this will then do is this should then load the data. So let's just make sure. Let me just run that, and hopefully if it's all running, just minimize this. We can then see it's loading the contents of that data. And all that I'm doing is just so that you can see that when this data comes in a little bit later, that it is actually running today. The time is in UTC, so we can see that that information is over there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to then create a new CSV, a new lakehouse table called CSV shortcut cells. And what it's going to do is it's going to append each time that actually happens. So I'm just going to click on run. It should take a couple of seconds, hopefully, to get that going and end up and running. Okay, so that's done. So what is happening in the subsequent steps is I'm actually just running it again, and this is a bit later on, just to show you when the data is going to be streaming in or running near real time into the actual notebook. So if I had to come over here and click refresh, you can now see that I've got those sales loaded in over here. And the reason I can't see the contents of those tables is because I'm actually in a notebook. If I was in the lakehouse view, I would see those contents. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to now load some data using a Dataflow Gen2. So over here, here's the new item selection. So it makes it a lot easier. So I can just start typing and go, I want to do a Dataflow Gen2. And what I typically recommend for everyone using it is, first thing is to rename your data flow, because what happens is otherwise it just goes data flow 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And that can become quite a challenge when working with multiple data flows in a single workspace. So I'm going to call this SQL Mirror Sales, and then that'll just give it a new name. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to say I want to import it from SQL Server. Let me just get my source. So what I'm doing over here, this is my mirrored database that I'm once again using as a source. If I put that in there, it should come through and say, okay, it should map through. So I'm just going to go through and authenticate. Hopefully that won't take too long. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just bring in this particular table over here. Again, it's the mirrored table. So let me just bring that in. And you can hopefully see that's brought the data in over here. You can see it's got a whole lot of information in there. And what I now need to do, because I want to have this running into the lakehouse, I need to now add a new destination. So I'm going to click on add destination. I'm going to say, okay, I want to add it to a lakehouse, my lakehouse connection. This will then come through and ask me where I want to put it. So I want to go to my this one over here. If memory serves me, and as you can see, no, that's not the one. I'm a bit confused. I always get confused because I've got quite a few tenants running here. Just bear with me. Where it is. I've got too many of these things open. This is, there we go, Fabric demo. Apologies for that. So as you can see over here, if I expand this, here is the same lake house. And if I had to expand that, you can see it's now got the multiple tables in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this table as, I'm just going to give it the name of Dataflow SQL Mirror sales, and then I'm going to click next. So now what you'll see is you get the option here where it's got this all working. You do get an option to use automatic settings if you wanted to just do that by default. I typically turn that off because I want to be in control of what I'm doing, and especially in this example, I want to append the data. So coming back to Abhishek's question, what you had earlier, is if I had to say replace, I can actually use a dynamic schema. So every time it runs, it will automatically make that change. The difference is that if you want to append data with a dynamic schema, it will not work. As with this example, because I want to be appending data, as soon as I say I want to append the data, that dynamic schema changes because the schema has to be fixed. So as you can see over here, I want to append and all the data types are as expected. I'm going to click on Save Settings. So what that will then do is I've now have it mapped through to the lakehouse, and I can click on Publish. So what that's then going to do, it's first going to publish the data flow, and then it's going to refresh or bring in the data into the actual lakehouse. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long for that to actually happen. So what I'm now going to be looking to do is, if I go back to my lakehouse and I had to give this a refresh, what you can see, I have got my shortcut to my SQL Mirror. I've got my CSV file that I've imported from my Azure Blob storage, and right now I'm just waiting for the Dataflow Gen2 to complete and come through, and that's actually awesome. You can now see that this has come through. So now that I've got my 3 different data sources, this is where I'm now going to create a new semantic model using the DirectLake, because all the files are actually sitting within one lake. So what I can do over here is I can say I want to select a new semantic model. I'm going to call this real-time demo semantic model, just so I know it's a semantic model. I can then expand, and over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my CSV file, which is being loaded through the notebook. I'm then going to select my shortcut, which is coming from the mirrored database, and then I'm going to select my data flow to actually do that. I'm going to click on confirm. So what this will then do is this will then go and create the semantic model. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long for that to actually happen. So again, you can almost think of the scenario where initially you got to bring your data in. You've got to get all the different sources, get them in the lakehouse, make sure they're going into the lakehouse tables, and then from there you can then go and create your semantic model based on those particular lake houses. So as you can see over here, the data's come in, and I've got my 3 tables over here. One thing just to make a note of is, while in your lakehouse tables, because it uses the Delta Parquet format, you can't have things such as column spacing, spaces and column names, etc. But fortunately, you can do this in the semantic model view. So for instance, here I can go and I could rename this to say sales amount. So what I could do over here, I could rename this one. Let's just say I want to rename this one instead of being that. I want it to be my SQL Mirror. Just go SQL Mirror source. Spelled that correctly. Yeah. So just showing you the flexibility that you can do once you're bringing this into the semantic model, how you can actually edit this. And obviously, this will be improving that. You keep on adding new functionality, etc., into the editing a semantic model on the web. You can also edit this with Tablet Editor 3. I haven't tried it with Tablet Editor 2. But yeah, that's just hopefully something that you can do. So now that I've got my semantic model created, I'm going to go and create a new report. So this should open up, and what I'm really going to do over here is I'm actually just going to create 3 visuals, very basic visuals, in order to actually just show you how that's going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say for the CSV over here, I'm just going to let that load, and I'm going to just rename this one, and let's just, so we know what it is, go CSV sales amount, and actually I'll change that one to a card, just make it a value, display units, none, so you can actually see what it is over there. So that's coming from the CSV source. Then I'm going to go to the mirror one, and what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go add that one, and the invoice date key will make this a bit bigger in a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sort it that way. So when the data comes in, as an example, this date should be today's date as that information is coming in. And then the final one will be, oh no, that was the data flow, sorry. That will be coming in, that's the data flow that I've selected. And the final one will then be, because I've renamed these, will be the actual SQL Mirror shortcut source, which is coming through. And again, over here, I'm just going to make this one another card. And let's just format that one. Oh, over here. And go none. Okay, so as you can see, the different ones coming in. So what I'm going to do, let me now just actually save this report. The near real time report. Okay. The final thing I'm going to actually do is I'm actually going to download this file. And the reason for that is, as you can see over here, there's no data because it's using DirectLake mode, but I'm going to download it. And what I want to do is I'm going to open this up. Really been playing around with this, and I've got a, let me just go back over here. Let me just delete that one. Let me just rename it. Okay, let me just close that. Let me just open it again. So the reason I'm doing this is what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to configure the automatic page refresh to be every 10 seconds. So what that means is once the data starts coming in, this report should automatically update every 10 seconds based on the different scheduling in terms of the other processes that are running in the background. So all I'm going to do over here, I'm just going to let it load up. Hopefully I have my connections in place. Should load in a couple seconds. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on a blank area. I'm then going to go to page refresh over here. And I'm going to say automatic page refresh every 10 seconds. And as you can see over here, we had trouble loading this automatically, and that's fine. I'm not too worried because this is the model that is on my local PC, but I'm going to now publish this back into the Power BI service. I just wanted to do this. And again, this is a capacity setting that you've got to enable to say how low will you allow people to refresh the pages. So I'm just going to close that just to make it a bit easier. I'm going to go back to my workspace, and here you can see, no, I want to import, and as you can see over here, there's a little new option if it's notebooks or, so I'm just going to say I want to browse from this computer. I want my near real-time report, and yeah, it should ask me, do I want to replace that? I'm going to say yes. So that should upload pretty quickly. So effectively, I'm at the point now where I've got my DirectLake semantic model created. I've got my report, which is going to update every 10 seconds. So now at the end of configuring all of this, which is quite often quite a challenge in terms of getting that actually created, you know, the report's always the fun part right at the end in terms of getting that done. So I'm just going to pause for a second. I see I have a couple questions. So what a question with regards to the row limit of 300 million is where the fallback happens. Is this applicable to a shortcut and mirror as well? As far as I am aware, and I stand, you know, to be corrected, my assumption is yes. The 300 million rows applies when it's coming into the semantic model, because the semantic model doesn't know the underlying source if it's a shortcut or mirror. It just says, oh, how much data can I load in here? So thanks for that. So the other option was, can you please replay how you went to view the semantic model view? Yeah, sure. So what you can do is, once I've created the view or the semantic model, here's my semantic model over here, and you can actually just click on the little 3 dots, and there's an option to say open data model. And what that will do, it will then open up back into the model view. If you want to create a new one, you can do this by going into the actual lakehouse and then clicking, once you're in the lakehouse view, then clicking on new semantic model, which you can then, that'll then come up and give you that view in terms of how to get that, you know, how you want to do that in terms of the tables you want to add, etc. And another question from Abhishek: since Power BI is using DirectLake, is there any need for incremental refresh purposes, or because you're using shortcuts, etc., models in real time, there's no need for incremental refresh settings? Yes, that is correct, Abhishek. Because the data is automatically being loaded into DirectLake, it's always referencing all the data in those Parquet files. So as the Parquet file gets updated, which you'll see in a little while, those as the data is coming in and landing in the Delta Parquet file, the reports will automatically be updated. So there is no need to do an incremental refresh. And that's one of the advantages of DirectLake. Not only can you have this near real-time scenario, there's no need to actually go and incrementally load the data in. You can just load it through whatever process you want, for example, in a notebook, and that automatically flow through to your reports. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to now start the process of, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my shortcut over here. Sorry, not my shortcut, my notebook. And just going to let it connect. And I'm just going to say, okay, I want to run all. Okay, so that's going to start running. Next, what I'm going to do is I am going to go back here and I'm going to say I want to refresh my data flow. And finally, this is my SQL Server source that I have over here, where I'm going to be inserting some data. So again, I'm just going to start running that. So I've pretty much got 3 different items running. And now what should hopefully happen over here, I'll give it a little refresh for once, is that once those processes start running, within a couple seconds or a couple of minutes, we should see this updating if everything is working as expected. So if you notice, it's pretty quick, but it actually is a little circle running. It might be a bit difficult to see on the screen, but that should be all running in the background. So sometimes it takes a little while for the processes to go through and update those files. So I'm just going to see, give it a second or three. Let me just check here. So that one's running. It should be running. These numbers should be updating. Let me just give it a good old. Obviously, this is right at the end. This is the fun part, and it seems like. Let me just make sure. Is this running? So that's waiting for 60 seconds. That's great. Let me just make sure. Apologies for that. Am I got the right? Yes, that should be running. That's great. That these look like they're not updating. I wonder why. That should be. What I'm going to do, let's just try one other thing. Maybe I need to just close and reopen the report. Just let that run again. Is this one busy running? It says it is. I'm not having any luck, it seems. No, well, I did see that update a tiny bit. As you can see, there we go, finally. Clearly, just took a little bit of time. Might have a challenge with the notebook, but what you can see finally happening here is that this number has updated. And now I can see that I have a date for today's date with an amount. And there we go. That one has started updating. It looks like I had a challenge or something went wrong with the notebook. Did it run? No, let me just try it again. Let's get that running. I think it might take a little while to start up. But if I go back to the report, now what you can see is the information is coming in. So again, it does take a little while for the processes to run. As I said, it's not instant real time. It's near real time in terms of getting that information in. And it should be updating. That one is updating ever so slightly. And then you can see this one over here, the CSV sales amount. The notebook now is running. It only updates every 60 seconds, but that number has effectively doubled because I'm just reloading the information again and again. And now you can see they are actually all running successfully in terms of getting that information. And the reason this one only updated once, there we go. You can see now it's actually coming in and updating that as and when it happens. So again, this is depending on your source and how you bring in the data in. This can actually run pretty quickly with regards to getting the information in and getting that near real time running. This should update in a little while because I set the time for 60 seconds. It might take a little while. There we go. I've clearly broken something in my notebook that's causing it to fail. Let's have a quick look. What did I do? Oh, I know why. It's because this location I had changed. So I did not change it everywhere else. So if I had to go back there, do that, and come here, do that. And now let's just say I had to run that one last time. I'm not sure why this one account a while. So this particular one over here on the right is from, I should have renamed it better. There we go. You can see the values now updated. In the middle one, the reason it's not updating so often is that's the data flow, which just refreshes once and then it actually stops. So that's the reason why that one's not updating as often as the one on the right, which is from the SQL Mirror source, which is coming through. So that's the only other item I just wanted to quickly touch on with regards to that is the is in terms of the rough costings with regards to using Microsoft Fabric. So these costs are estimated costs that are in US dollars and based out of the US. And again, this is just an indication. Pricing can change, etc. But what I wanted to show was, you can sort of with a really small Fabric F2 capacity that you can run, and then you can scale it up. Obviously, it does get quite expensive, but the great thing here is you can use a pay-as-you-go option, which means you can start and pause. So you can just run it for a workload and then pause it, or you can have the reservation, which means you reserving capacity units for a month. And there is quite a savings when you do this. So again, just always be aware that you also pay for storage in OneLake. So just make sure that you always are monitoring your storage, because that, while it's only 3 cents a gigabyte, that can add up when you've got terabytes or petabytes worth of information. And finally, thanks for attending. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer. Otherwise, yep, thanks, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.